Hey everyone, welcome back and thank you for taking time out of your week to spend a little with me. We're having a little history mystery lesson today regarding William and Margaret Patterson from El Paso, Texas. The Pattersons became sort of a legend when they suddenly disappeared without a trace in 1957. Just this month marked 65 years since the strange occurrence and 65 years of unanswered questions. We're going to discuss what little is known about this seemingly ordinary couple, along with the events leading up to their disappearance. So, as always, I invite you to sit back, relax, and let's dive in. William Darrell Patterson was born on July 23, 1904, in Chicago, Illinois. Reportedly, he was one of 5 children, with 4 of his siblings being sisters. His boyhood was filled with hard times, and according to himself, a quick tongue was almost as handy as a pair of fists. His father, Luther Patterson, stated his son made a living off sleight of hand tricks, and he could talk his way out of any situation. William didn't have many goals in life, so he opted to travel the country with a carnival, working as a baker for several years. When he got bored of the lifestyle, he returned to Chicago where he found work for the Needell Mig Company of Chicago as a salesman, but quickly learned working for someone else wasn't his style. He was a great salesman, however, and he used this to his advantage. He purchased an old reflex-type camera and started promoting himself as a street photographer. It turned out William had a knack for it, and as time went on, he only got better. Even though he was honing his craft, he wasn't making enough money to support himself and his new wife, Margaret. It's unknown when William met Margaret, but it was before his move to El Paso, Texas. Margaret, whose maiden name was Kiefer, never revealed much to her friends or acquaintances about her past or upbringing. Margaret was also not close with her family. When she met William, her family didn't approve of the union and urged her not to pursue it, but she didn't listen and chose him over them. She didn't speak to them for over 20 years, and many of her family members just assumed she had passed away. But what could be pulled from the archives of Margaret was this. Margaret was a very private person. She never told friends how her and William got together or even what her birthday was. But she was raised on a farm near Owensboro, Kentucky, and was one of 7 children. All of her siblings lived out in the Midwest while she left home at a young age. She found work as a hostess at Hotel Vondom in Evansville, Indiana, before she met William, and much like William, she described her upbringing as rough. But the two stuck together despite all odds and started building for the future. Since money was scarce in Chicago, William decided he and Margaret try their luck in a new city. So sometime in the 1940s, the Pattersons packed up and moved to El Paso, Texas. For at least 3 years, William worked as a street photographer and as a special officer in a local nightclub, but finances were still tight. William was determined to not live the way he grew up. His family was comfortable but not wealthy, and he wanted to be wealthy. William was obsessed with material things and wanted a lifestyle where he could buy whatever, whenever. And in 1944, his luck turned around. His fast talking once again pushed him ahead in life when he met a wealthy man willing to provide him a loan. William had a dream of owning his own business, and the moneylender believed in him. So by 1945, William and Margaret Patterson opened Patterson's Photo Supply, located in downtown El Paso, which turned out to be a very successful business venture. William manned the front, while Margaret was in charge of the finances. Their wealth quickly grew, and they didn't mind showing it. They bought a boat since William was an avid fisherman, a Cadillac, property in Guaymas, Mexico. They were always seen in expensive clothing, and they went on trips often, usually to Mexico or Florida. But through all of the glitz, the Pattersons appeared to be a very ordinary couple, who for the most part were well liked by their neighbors. nothing seemed off or even unusual in their lives. Days before the Pattersons disappeared, they had their friends, the Wards, over for dinner. The Wards were pretty close with the Pattersons since they too owned a local business called Ward's Motor Clinic. After pleasant conversations and a lovely dinner, William asked Cecil Ward to accompany him to the garage and help him apply acrylic to his boat. They spent quality time and even made plans to get together again later in the week. But the evening was winding down, and after several hours, the Wards said goodbye to the Pattersons, unaware it would be the last time. Several days after the dinner party, specifically the morning of March 6, 1957, Cecil Ward went to work as usual. But as he was opening his business, he noticed William Patterson's cherished Cadillac sitting in the parking lot. It was odd to him since the visit was unplanned, but things got even weirder when another man exited the vehicle. Doyle Kirkland was the owner of another photography store called Duffy Photo Service. And despite the two competing for business, it was known Doyle and William were actually good friends. Doyle explained to Cecil that the previous night he and William worked on William's boat when William told him he and Margaret were going on an extended vacation. He asked Doyle to take his Cadillac in to fix a few problems and get a tune-up. It seemed kind of suspicious at first, but Cecil performed the service without much thought, especially since it wasn't uncommon for the Pattersons to take vacations on a whim. In fact, no one really questioned the Pattersons' absence. That was until months went by with no word from them. Cecil Ward tried on many occasions to get in touch with his friends, but never received any type of response. His concern continued to grow, so on August 15, 1957, Cecil called the police to report the Pattersons as missing. He hadn't heard from them since March. Authorities arrived at 3000 Piedmont Drive, the quaint but quiet home occupied by the Pattersons. They knocked on the door announcing themselves and explained they were there to perform a welfare check, but to their surprise, they found the home devoid of life, aside from Margaret's little white and yellow cat, Tommy, wandering the property dirty and malnourished. Once inside, the home didn't display signs of a struggle, but it was in disarray. Dishes from their last meal were stacked up in the sink. Piles of clothing were laid out on the bed. They hadn't bothered to turn off their utilities or halted the delivery of their mail or newspaper. And lastly, everything was left behind. This included their boat and car. They also left a very expensive coat at the nearby dry cleaners with no instructions for storage. It seemed the Pattersons had just gotten up and left in a hurry. The whole thing felt really off, especially Tommy the cat. Margaret cherished her pet, treating him very much like her own child. She would have boarded him or at least had a plan in place before leaving. Police were baffled, so they started reaching out to known acquaintances and neighbors for answers. The Pattersons' neighbors stated on March 5, 1957, they stopped by the home to offer the couple some Girl Scout cookies. The neighbor explained that when Margaret answered the door, she seemed very upset about something, and William was very unhappy that a visitor was even stopping by. They also said that on March 5th, there was a lot of unusual activity at the home, and they estimated the Pattersons must have left late into the night or took off during the early morning hours of March 6th. This provided a rough timeline, but police began to wonder if Margaret and William had put any other plans in place, especially with their business, since they'd been gone for so long. This angle led authorities to the personal accountant of the Pattersons, Herbert Roth. Roth explained that close to 2 weeks after the Pattersons left, he received a telegram from William on March 15, 1957. The telegram originated from a Western Union office in Dallas, Texas, and provided specific instructions for Roth to follow. Roth was to act as a sort of manager for all of William's dealings. William wanted Roth to sell a mobile home he and Margaret owned and use the proceeds to support the photo supply store. Then he wanted him to rent out the Pattersons' home for at least 9 months. He also had Roth cancel hotel reservations they had in Washington, D.C. for the National Photography Association. They were supposed to attend the event that spring. Lastly, William requested that he hire Doyle Kirkland as the new manager of Patterson Photo Supply to replace William. Roth explained the telegram wasn't odd at first, since he often performed tasks for William, but what made it suspicious was William signed it as W.H. Patterson, when his middle name didn't start with an H, it started with a D. Police dug more into this mysterious telegram, but sadly didn't gain much more from the lead. The telegram was commissioned over the phone, so no original copy existed to compare with known handwriting samples. Allegedly, during this time period, identification cards didn't usually have a photograph of the person, just their name and basic information. So even if it had been sent in person, anyone could have sent the telegram. The telegram seemed to only complicate the case more, but it did bring suspicions upon Doyle Kirkland. It seemed strange to investigators that William would leave his business in the hands of the competition. During questioning, Doyle told authorities he had been at the Pattersons' home on the evening of March 5th. He explained his relationship with the Pattersons and said it wasn't unusual for him to help William since the two were good friends. He also described the relationship between the Pattersons as a good one. He never really saw the two fight or argue, even though allegedly Margaret had a drinking problem. Police didn't learn much from Doyle, and although it seemed suspicious, they had nothing to concretely link him to their disappearance, and just let that lead kind of fizzle out. By the 1960s, Doyle moved from El Paso, and after this move, they just lost track of him, since they didn't view him as a person of interest. Cecil Ward was also interviewed further by police, where he described William as extravagant but a kind man. But as the investigation continued to unfold, a new picture of William Patterson was being painted. Ward told police everything he knew about his friend. This included an event he recalled a month prior to William's disappearance. During one of William's many trips to Juarez, Mexico, he drank a bit too much and attempted to fight a waiter in the restaurant he was at. But it turned out this fight wasn't just because William had a disagreement with a stranger. It was because William was dining with his 20-year-old mistress, Estefana Herrero Martin, and the waiter was refusing to serve her. Again, police were baffled, and they had a new witness to question. Estefana claimed she saw William during the morning of March 6, 1957. He reportedly had some important news to tell her, but couldn't at that very moment. He also told her that, quote, when they come for him, he will have to leave in a hurry, end quote. She said William never explained who they were, but he seemed rather flustered. However, Estefana later retracted her statement with no provided reasoning. The disappearance of the Pattersons seemed to be a never-ending rabbit hole, especially when they spoke to the Pattersons' lawyer, who produced a letter allegedly from William Patterson that was sent on May 29, 1957. The letter was postmarked from Laredo, Texas, and provided no return address. It read that Margaret and William were leaving the country and would not be returning, and provided further instructions on how William wanted his business and property disposed of. William left everything to non-relatives, which was strange because his father and one of his sisters were both alive. He split a quarter of his shares in Patterson Photo Supply between Herbert Roth, Doyle Kirkland, and a 24-year-old employee named Arthur Marino. The last quarter he wanted divided amongst the rest of the employees at the business. He also gave Arthur Marino his home and furniture, while Doyle got their vacation property, boat, and Cadillac. The letter was typewritten and signed in handwriting, W.D. Patterson. The Texas Department of Public Safety handwriting experts reported that in their opinion the signature on the letter was not authentic. They stated it was similar but had discrepancies compared to known handwriting samples, and felt it was very probable that William Patterson did not sign this letter. Regardless of authenticity, the document held no legal weight, since Margaret, who co-owned everything, had not signed it, and it couldn't be proven that a witness was present at the signing. Police had more questions than answers at this point and decided to call for a court of inquiry, also called an inquest, to further question the Pattersons' peers. One of the witnesses called testified that he had lied to friends, claiming William would be in touch with everyone in June of 1957. He stated he only did this because William asked him to. On a previous occasion, this friend claimed that William said if he ever disappeared, his friend was supposed to make it seem like he was okay and that he would return soon. Doyle Kirkland was also called to the stand, where he provided further details about the night of March 5th. He was awoken by a phone call from someone in the middle of the night claiming to be William. As Doyle had previously mentioned, William stated he and Margaret were going away for a while. However, Doyle admitted he was far too sleepy at the time that he couldn't be sure if the voice was really William Patterson. The Pattersons' lawyer was also put on the stand regarding the letter he had received, but nothing new came from this. William's father, Luther, was flown in from Chicago, where he testified that his son had taken off like this before. In fact, he claimed he expected Margaret and William to disappear at some point, and he suspected no foul play at this time. However, he would change this sentiment years later. Much like everything else with this case that police had overturned, nothing of value came from the inquest, and they were back to where they were before. The case was essentially cold since they had no new leads to follow. Throughout the years, authorities received several tips regarding sightings of the Pattersons in both the United States and Mexico. One lead seemed very promising, so much so they traveled to a hotel in Valle de Bravo, Mexico. They questioned several employees who confirmed they had seen the couple before. Allegedly, they stayed for a few months, but the staff had no documentation to support their claims. By 1964, Margaret and William Patterson were declared legally dead and the case was closed. That was until 1984. Investigators reopened the Pattersons' disappearance when Reynaldo Nanagari came forward as a witness. Reportedly, he was hired to clean the Pattersons' home after they went missing. He stated he found blood around and underneath the water heater in the garage. He also found a piece of what he believed to be human scalp stuck in the propeller of William's boat. Reynaldo claimed that during this discovery, he noticed one of William's associates take blood-stained sheets out of the home and toss them in the trunk of a car. But unfortunately, he was not close enough to provide a clear identification. When asked why Reynaldo waited all of this time to say something, he explained at the time he didn't want to come forward because he was an undocumented immigrant and didn't want to be brought under scrutiny by authorities. None of the information provided could be confirmed, and sadly, Reynaldo passed away 2 years later in a car crash. The disappearance of the Pattersons remained one of the greatest mysteries in El Paso. It has inspired many creative theories, such as the Pattersons being abducted by a UFO, the couple being murdered, or one of the Pattersons murdering the other one, and stories of espionage. The El Paso County Sheriff believes this theory as plausible, stating, quote, "I think they were spies. The way they got up and just walked away and left everything behind. The Russians or whoever sent them probably told them to drop everything and go back." Some people said they even saw Patterson take photos of Fort Bliss and of military shipments on the trains that came here, end quote. The original theory was that they were kidnapped, but no signs of a struggle were present, which led investigators to believe this was probably unlikely. Other theories included financial troubles or simply wanting to start fresh. It had been purported that maybe the Pattersons were not as well off as they portrayed, or maybe they didn't handle their finances properly and had to escape, while some believed they got tired of the daily humdrum and just vanished to get away from it all. Regardless, the Pattersons case has been reopened on 3 separate occasions, once in 1984, then in 2005, and lastly in 2011, where it remains open today. Investigators have tried diligently to piece everything together from the beginning with fresh eyes. However, their biggest challenge has been finding witnesses old and new, since many of them have moved away, are much older and have a hard time recollecting, or have since passed away. The cold cases in El Paso are prioritized by solvability, and since the Pattersons have been missing for more than 60 years, it's unlikely anyone from that era is still around to tell the tale. Also, the Pattersons have no known living relatives pushing for the case to be solved, so investigators aren't really pushing the issue. But since the case does remain open, any information is helpful. If you or anyone you know has any information on the disappearance of Margaret or William Patterson, please call the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. I'll put the information on the screen and also in the description box of this video. This one was packed full of mystery, and I honestly don't know what to think. A lot of information just doesn't add up, and there's a lot of players that could have been responsible if foul play was in fact involved. Also, it wouldn't be me if I didn't mention this, but apparently the Pattersons' home is haunted by their spirits, or so a former occupant believes. Elizabeth Baker was a kid when her family moved into the home in 1972, but she claimed that soon after they moved in, she started to see this cat that seemed to be lacking color, like if it was behind a sheer veil or something, and it would hang around like it was waiting to be fed, but when she reached out to pet the cat, it just disappeared. She also claimed to see a woman wearing 50s style clothing that also looked solid, but when she started looking closer, it looked like the woman was standing behind a sheer veil, like the cat was. The whole family also experienced unexplained footsteps, shadows, and certain smells, such as a cat, which they didn't own, and pipe smoke, which no one smoked. The family moved out after 3 months, and paranormal teams have investigated. I'm going to put the article about the hauntings in the description box in case any of you are interested, because the team who did the investigation also included EVPs that they took from inside the house, so if you're into that kind of stuff, give it a listen. But enough of my ghost talk. Let me know what you guys think. What theory do you believe holds weight? Me personally, I'm thinking that William might have killed his wife. And I don't know, I'm just speculating. But all of that just to say, share your comments down below and we can chat about it. If you found this to be informative, please consider giving the video a thumbs up to let YouTube know you want more. And lastly, if you haven't yet subscribed, you should, because we would love to have you under the ash tree. Thank you to all of you lovely people for making it this far. I hope your week is as awesome as you are. I appreciate your love and support, and I will see you all in the next one. Until then, bye friends.